We're with Donald Ray Cobb. He is a World War II Navy veteran. He is here at the Evansville Wartime Museum today to tell us his story. Mr. Cobb, could you please tell us your full name and when and where you were born?
My name is Donald Ray Cobb, and I was born in Evansville, but I only lived here 3 weeks. My parents moved us to my older brother and myself to Detroit, Michigan. And my father worked in the auto plant. And when I was 4 years old, my father became ill, and we moved back to his parents' home in around Hanson, Kentucky. And September of that year, he passed away.
What year was that, Mr. Cobb?
That was 1925.
Okay.
No, I was born in 25. That was 1930. And then we moved over to my mother's parents in McLean County, Kentucky. And
What city was that in McLean County?
that was Calhoun.
Calhoun.
But we lived about 6 miles out of Calhoun on a farm. And no transportation, except feet and bicycles sometimes. And I wouldn't have been able to go to high school except they started a school bus just before I started my 7th grade. And one of the neighbors had ridden a horse back and forth, so we didn't have a horse. So I only lived there 12 years, yes. But I finished all my elementary and high school during those 12 years.
What was the name of the school?
It was Calhoun High School.
And was it a very big school?
No, they
How-
had, it's the same building, they had elementary and high school. And
So it was a
my
one-room
class-
schoolhouse in a way?
Pardon
A
me?
one-building schoolhouse?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And my class only had 33 in my class. And in fact, at elementary school, when I lived out in the country, it was a one-room school. So I had listened to the higher grades and so forth, what was going on. So they skipped me past the second grade. So I graduated when I was just barely a few days past my 17th birthday. So I had a year before they could draft me,
What year did you graduate from high school?
1942.
42. And you're born in 25, and most of your life is down there in Calhoun, Kentucky.
Around that area.
Okay. So then where did your mother work? And this is during the Great Recession, or, you know, it was bad times for everybody in the 1930s. Can you tell us about lifestyle then and how hard things were for you then?
Yes, my grandfather passed away in 1931 and left my mother with 3 small children, and her mother, who had arthritis, was all bent over, and her fingers were like that. And also her brother, who had typhoid fever, which ruined his mind. So that left her. So she walked the 6 miles to Calhoun and worked, and then walked back and cooked supper, and then we raised a garden, and so life was very tough for her.
So your mom was a sole provider, really, because grandma had bad arthritis and
Yes.
her dad had already died, so she was a sole provider. What job did she have when she walked 6 miles every day?
A sewing room.
Sewing room?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
She didn't make much money, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But of course, prices were low, but so nobody had any money. That was the problem there.
So you knew tough times as a child, so did your mother. You knew tough times. Those were not easy.
It was not easy.
Yeah.
No.
So then after high school,
As soon as I graduated from high school, my aunt lived in Detroit, so I went back up there. I wanted to make a little money before I went in the service. So I went up there and got a job with Coca-Cola Bottling Company as a file clerk. And at night I took a couple of classes in mechanical drawing through Wayne State University. And so after that took about 6 months. Then with those mechanical drawing classes, I went over and got a job with Fisher Body Division of General Motors, and they were starting production on the fuselage of the B-29 bomber just outside Detroit. So they hired me to take care of the blueprint files, and the aircraft drawings are in grids. So when they make a change on the big drawing, they just want a little change. They just put out a 8.5 by 11 sheet with the grids on it, so I could check to see if that was already incorporated in the big drawing. And anyway, I worked on that. It took about 6 months, and then they promoted me to take care of the tooling books. This was the tool division of Fisher Body. So as soon as I was 18 in 43, excuse me, I was drafted, and then I ended up at Great Lakes for boot camp. And then after boot camp, I went to the University of Chicago Navy Radio School. I was there for 5 months, and I ended up second in my class. The man that was first had been a railroad telegrapher, so he had a little head start on it. But then after that, I was sent to Casco Bay, Maine, and for a month, and I was learning to operate a high-frequency radio direction finder and to understand German submarine code. They put an extra dash here and there in their code, and they changed it, so to keep people from recognizing. So I learned to do that, and then I was sent, after shoveling coal while I was waiting for transfer, I was put aboard the USS Murphy. That was an Irish named ship, and I went aboard on St. Patrick's Day.
Huh.
So
There's a USS Murphy next to you. Can you tell us a little bit about that USS Murphy? You can point out things and what part of the ship you worked on, and tell us how all that ship worked when you first got on. What were your memories of how big it was, and did it scare you or things
it
of
was
that?
still in dry dock. They just finished up building a whole new front end on it, because in October of '42, a U.S. oiler had run right through the middle of it and cut it in two, and the bow sank, and they lost 35 men. And that, one of the men that was still on the ship when I was on it, he came back when they finished up. He had been in the bow, and when it started, turning over on its side, he was in water, swimming, trying to find a way out. And he started toward one hatch, and somebody on the other side closed it, locked it, because that's what they were supposed to do. And then he headed toward another place, and somebody reached down and grabbed him and pulled him up, so he became a friend later on. And
What had run into that ship? What hit it?
it was a U.S. oiler.
U.S. oil, or in the fog or something like that, or why did it run
It had
into?
been in another convoy, and it had developed engine problems. So it had turned around and started back toward New York. And it was dark, foggy, very low visibility. And the Murphy picked up the radar, and the radar back then wasn't very good. So they knew there was a ship out there or something. And they each thought the other one was a submarine. And so the Murphy started looking for this submarine, they thought, and the oiler only had, could only pick up the noise of propellers. They didn't have radar. So when they got close, the oiler, they assumed it was a sub, and they did what I guess is natural. They pointed toward what they thought was a sub to make themselves a smaller target, and they ended up running right through the middle of the Murphy. So when I went aboard, it was, half of it was new.
Point to where they hit the Murphy on that ship there. Point to where they hit it, about.
Right about there.
In the center, right where the mast is. About in the center, huh?
They lost this whole part.
And how did they ever get back?
The stern stayed afloat, so they towed it back into New York.
Who towed it back? Another ship?
Yeah, smaller, I think they had a tug, but in the beginning, one of the other ships, one of the other destroyers, I think, was towing it. But then they had a couple of tugs, I think.
And they must have closed all those hatches for the front end not to sink. They closed every hatch. That's what they were supposed to do.
Well, some of the hatches, yeah, those hatches are all closed all, all the time.
Yeah.
Except when you go through them. But I guess that, I don't know why that one hatch was still open, unless it broke something, got something loose.
It saved your friend. What was your friend's name?
Frederick Scheller.
Frederick Scheller. Boy, that
I talk about him in my book. But
his story was amazing, though, wasn't it? I mean, he's lucky to be alive.
very lucky.
And he had a lot of experience on Murphy even before you got on, and you befriended him, so you learned a lot about what a destroyer would do.
Yeah. He became a yeoman after that.
Yeah.
And while they were rebuilding it, he would go to the post office and so forth, so he gave him a bicycle and he rode back and forth. But as far as, after I graduated from that, learning about the high frequency radio direction finder, we had a cubicle on the port side, back about here somewhere on the other side.
Right past that smokestack about. The second smokestack or between the two smokestacks on the port on the other side?
I don't really remember, it was around that area right there.
Uh-huh.
It was,
Up high or down low on the
it
ship?
was on the main deck.
Main deck, okay.
We had an oscilloscope, it was set up so you would be able to get the angle of where the submarine was located.
Is that what's up on the top of the ship there? Is that it? Up on top by the mast? Is that what you're talking about? Up by the head of the smokestack? No, further up. Up there, up on the top. That's a radar up there.
Oh, it's not up there. No.
It's not up there. It's down there.
It was right above our cubicle.
I see.
But it was, that might be it. It looks like it's too far back.
And what was it doing, Mr. Cobb?
It was picking up the direction. It was a cross, it was a thing like that, but there was another one that was crossed.
Uh-huh.
So it was set up, you get a much stronger signal in one or the other, and then they could pick up the angle. I only heard this a transmission one time, and I called out the direction, and I guess another destroyer called out the direction also, and I heard depth charges going off. But, so I don't know if they got the sub or not. But then in general quarters, I was assigned, they can't use all the radio men, everybody has to be doing something. So I was assigned to pass ammunition up to the number 4 gun, 5-inch gun. But
Where's that gun at? Do you know where that is?
that was right back here,
Uh-huh.
all the way back.
4-inch ammo is about the size of your arm. Pretty good size.
It was 5-inch,
5-inch, so pretty good size.
pretty good size.
Pretty heavy.
Yeah, I usually was passing the cartridge that has the powder charge in it. It weighed about 30 pounds.
So it had powder in it and had the bullet on the front, or the projectile on the front.
Projectile was separate.
Oh, it was a separate projectile, and then your powder was in another one. The projectile's 30 pounds and the powder's 30
I don't know
pounds?
about the projectile, that was probably a little more.
Yes, uh-huh.
But maybe not a whole lot.
How many at that gun site? About 4 of you?
There was somebody down in the powder room passing his stuff, and then I would pass it. I would pass it up to the loader.
What was the distance a 5-inch gun could go? Was it about 8 miles out there, or how far would it go? And was it very accurate, and did you ever see it shot?
Yeah, it was pretty accurate. I don't know how far it was accurate.
Yes.
But, it would fire more than 8 miles, but that was probably about the range
The backlash on it, did you feel it? And how were your ears after that? And how much of backlash did you feel? It didn't move the bolt at all. It was going straight up and down with the bolt.
it shook the deck.
Every time it went off.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was loud.
Uh-huh.
I was surprised. I've been surprised that I haven't lost my hearing,
Yes.
and I just now ordered hearing aids, and I don't wear hearing aids right now, you know, and but I had noticed that in a conversation with several people, I would miss out on things.
How old are you right now, Mr. Cobb?
I'm 97,
97, born in 25. What's your birthday?
April 28th.
April 28th. Oh, yeah. And then, so then you're starting on that destroyer. Tell us, Bruce and I were interviewing you. Tell us your first, go through every mission if you can remember, scene by scene if you can. I mean, you wrote your book about this.
Were you deployed from Maine? Did you guys leave from Maine for Europe?
I went aboard, we were still in the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
Gotcha.
So Brooklyn, so you left Maine and went down to Brooklyn on a train? On a train and left from the Brooklyn Navy Yard?
Right. And then we went, first place we went was back up to Casco Bay, and for a shakedown. And we were,
What year was that then? About 43 or 44?
I went aboard in March of '44.
March of 44, okay.
And then first, early in May, we headed for, we went to Belfast, Ireland.
By yourself, or did you have a convoy?
We didn't have a convoy of merchant ships. We had, there was more than one destroyer, I don't remember how many.
Huh.
But they were getting us over there for, we didn't know what we were going over for, but we, of course, knew that we were going to be in something before long.
What date was that again? About
It was
April
about
of 44?
About the end of the first week of May that we went over.
So May of 44, you went over to there, and
Right.
how many ships were in Ireland when you went there, when you hang out at Belfast?
Well, we didn't stay any one place very long. We were just in and out. We went back and forth to Weymouth and Plymouth, England, Portland, and we were in Belfast, around Belfast. Usually when we left England, we went back to Belfast.
Did you do any practice maneuvers? Did you see any German subs when you were out there?
No. After I had that one contact, they just pretty well put us back in the regular radio crew. So there were 3 of us at the time. But what was I supposed to say?
So you're a month before D-Day, you're May of 44, so a month before D-Day, and you didn't know D-Day was gonna happen. That's Operation Overlord. You never heard of Operation Overlord at that time.
No,
But you could tell there was something going on because there were so many people. When you go into Plymouth, how many troops were in there? Was it crowded? And
I didn't get ashore.
You never got ashore?
Never got ashore in Ireland or in England at the time.
So they didn't want all you guys off on shore to
They
cause
didn't.
problems, probably. They had enough
Probably.
problems, yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of the maneuvering was to fool the Germans.
Uh-huh.
We spent the last, just before we started over to Omaha Beach, we were up in Scotland, and some of the first, we were kind of maneuvering and some training. We fired a few rounds in some of the areas up in there. And then on June the 5th,
Before that though, were you scared?
I'm sure that I was apprehensive. I wasn't in a panic or anything like that. I'm sure, you know, I remember in the back of my mind, I was hoping nothing happened.
But most of the time they kept you busy to keep you away from thinking too much, if you thought too much. So they probably kept you busy. How many troops were on your ship? And you just had ships company? You only had Navy guys on your ship. You weren't carrying Marines around or anything else.
Marines.
How many guys on that ship? 500?
No, I don't know, it varied, you know, a little bit of time to time, but what they listed as the usual crew was 275.
Where'd you sleep? On the bottom down there, or where'd you have to get sleeping? Was it fun? There was good
As far back
sleeping?
as you could go.
Uh-huh.
In there were 3 bunks. I was in the middle one. I've got a story about that too.
Well, tell us that story on the bunk and the clothes. Where'd you keep your clothes? How many clothes did you have? How much clothes?
We had well, not a whole lot.
A bag? You had a sea bag and
We
had
had a locker,
Uh-huh.
a little foot locker,
Yes.
and that was pretty well full. We had dungarees, of course, and blue shirts, a couple of shirts, and our dress uniform, and a pea coat. That was, you know, you probably know what those are. They were pretty heavy, cotton wool. But
Did you stink, or who did your laundry?
ship did the laundry.
Every day?
No, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Not every day, but before I ran out.
What kind of shower? Did you take a Navy shower? You know how to do a Navy shower? Did they teach you that then? And what is a Navy shower?
Yeah, they had open shower there. And one time we were low on water and we took a saltwater shower.
Mhm.
But
They didn't let you run that water very long, did they? You didn't get to run that water in the shower very long, did you? Or they get mad at you at that, or they didn't care?
nobody ever told me
Couldn't run it?
because I didn't stay in very long anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Some people later in the Navy, they called it a Navy shower, where you had to get yourself wet and then you had to soap. and then you had to get yourself wet, then you had to turn the shower off, because they had not a lot of water.
Well, these didn't run all the time, no.
They'd be off and on.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they were trying to save water, didn't want you
Oh,
to,
yeah,
so
'cause
they'd be
they-
off and on, you soap, and then it'd rinse you, and it would take 2 or 3 times to rinse, probably.
because they had to fill the water tanks when they were in port.
Every time I went to port, it wasn't, they didn't have a desalinating machine, so when you went to all those ports, you filled up with water when you were there, and gasoline, and food.
Yeah,
Was the food any good?
I thought it was pretty good. It
Did-
was, I guess, pretty similar all the time, but
Yeah. Did you ever see the captain and the XO, the CO and the XO? What was their rank, and how many officers on board, and how many enlisted? 90% enlisted, 10% officers?
you know, I never thought about that. We had I guess our captain was a commander. And our executive officer was a Lieutenant J.G. He was an Annapolis grad. And that was unusual on a destroyer, I think.
Could you tell an Annapolis grad different than somebody else? Could you tell by how they acted, or how their decorum? Nothing much different. Everybody's about the same out there.
Yeah,
But Annapolis grads, remember, they did all these fast officers in World War II. Most of them were fast officers, where they put them to these P12 programs, all these other programs, where you squeeze the academy, instead of 4 years academy, you squeeze in 16 months. And so you made it, because we didn't have a place. We couldn't have academy and West Point weren't big enough to hold all these people. You had to squeeze them at the universities.
this Lieutenant J.G. McTighe, he was old enough to have had a higher
Rank.
place,
Yeah.
a higher ship, but I think he had a little drinking problem or something. So I
Yeah.
think
He got knocked down a little bit, maybe.
he ended
Yeah.
up being captain of the ship when they were getting ready to decommission it.
Yeah, they were done. They ranked, everybody jumped up and ranked on the way home. Yeah. I interrupt you. Back to June 5th is where you were.
Oh,
Anything happened before June 5th you want to tell us about? Because June 5th, we really get some action then. But anything before June 5th that was remarkable on all those
it
trips?
was pretty routine back then.
Yeah. No big scares.
No big
Yeah.
scares.
If you went up in the North Sea, though, there was a lot of problems up there. I wouldn't want to been up in the North Sea.
We did quite a bit of submarine patrolling
Uh-huh.
up in that area.
Never saw them, though.
Never saw one. The only time I heard one was when I first went aboard.
Yeah.
Up in
How'd you avoid mines up there? There's lots of mines there. Did you guys know where all the mines were? Because if you had a mine, you're toast.
I think we had probably had mine sweepers with us,
Uh-huh.
but
Well, we'll go back to June 5th then. And June 5th, remember, we were supposed to, 6/6/44 was Normandy invasion, but they were supposed to do it before that, but there was bad weather, and you were floating around that bad weather. Can you tell us about that bad weather? The bad weather was the 4th and the 5th, I believe. It was terrible weather, and you had just one day of break that you went in. Can you tell us about that bad weather? Because you're floating around there. Everybody got seasick in those days. It was terrible weather.
yeah, I think my memory was that we started out, we came down from Scotland, but I have a copy of the ship's log, and I think it said from Ireland, but we might have come down from Scotland the day before, you know, kind of got this little hazy there. But then when we left to head for Normandy, then they told us what we were gonna do.
Did you ever hear the word Overlord? You never knew the name.
I didn't know the name, no.
They told you were going, you know, on the 5th or the 6th that you knew what you were gonna do? When did you know? No. The 5th you knew what you were gonna do.
Because we were
The
headed-
day before.
We were headed, you know, we had pretty good distance to go.
Didn't that scare you that day? Because you knew you were going to
Oh,
war. You didn't think you were coming back. Did you think you were coming back?
Yeah, I think I was, well, I knew it was possible I wouldn't. But I don't remember ever really thinking, I'm not gonna make it back. I known of one guy that, when they told him what ship he was gonna be on, he said, well, I'm not gonna live. I don't know how he knew, but, strange things happen.
Okay, before we get to that D-Day, Bruce, I'm interrupting a bunch. You got things, other things? Yeah.
No, you're asking some very good questions. Now, the Navy operation was called Neptune, correct?
Right.
Did you know that name?
I don't remember hearing it.
Okay.
Now that day, on the 5th, did you start seeing a lot of ships? I mean, you probably saw so many ships you've never seen in your life. 7,000 ships that day.
Well, they were coming from different directions, you know.
But so you didn't see them all at once. But when you got, I mean, there's so many ships. You could see 25 miles from your horizon. You could probably see ships in all 4 directions, could you not?
They must have spread us out.
Because you did. It didn't look like it was all crammed together.
Didn't look, no.
I see. Okay.
But it was June, but it was cold. I had on about everything I had in my locker, and I was out there, you know, with the guns. And it was dark, and I was shivering. I'm sure part of that was emotion.
Midnight or 3 in the morning? What time was that? 3 in the morning?
We were just about all night, you know, because they timed it so we got to Normandy at 5:30.
And you were general quarters all night? Were you at general quarters all night?
All night.
So you were at your post all night, so you were out in that back gun, and it was freezing back there in June, wet North Atlantic.
It was damp,
Yes.
yeah, humidity, you know,
Uh-huh.
and it was cold.
You had your pea coat on, that didn't stop everything, did
I
it?
was,
Shivering, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, go on and tell us about that day. Bruce, interrupt if you need to.
You know,
So then it's 3 in the morning, then get where it got you. Did you get there at 5:30 in the morning?
we got, yeah, first thing we did was protect some minesweepers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we timed it to get in position. And that's probably when the Germans saw what was happening.
So as you're ready there, the battleships are further back, and they've already bombed. They started bombing probably early in the morning,
Yes.
and they got a better distance. They're 11 to 15 miles at the 16-inch guns. Your guns aren't that big, so they were out further away than you. And then they had a whole trail used because you're probably the next trail closest to land. You were probably 8 miles from land.
That's probably a good estimate on that.
Were any of those guns from the Germans up there in the pillboxes, were any of them getting you or getting close to you?
No, not until
You don't remember any shells hitting close to you?
no, I don't. We had I've got a copy of the ship's log, and I've also got a copy of somebody wrote kind of a journal of what was going on. And it's got stuff that the ship's log didn't put in, because it would have been top secret, you know. But of course, I was on watch as a radio man, unless we were general quarters, you know. I wouldn't be out on the deck maybe, and wouldn't even know what was going on out there. But said that one time a German plane was shot down, and they tried to hit us, and then some of the ships were damaged by they were, I can't think of the right name, they were bombs that they could guide, they were guided. And some of the ships were sunk by that.
Missiles or not torpedoes, just
So they're called bombs.
those things they sent out of Germany that hit England during Battle of Britain? Those things that Vanguard, the missiles, that type of stuff?
That was V1.
V1s, were V1s working against?
Buzz bombs.
But would they hit some
We
ships?
had one go over, and in fact, our anti-aircraft guns fired at this, but they quit because they're afraid, remember they might hit some of the other ships.
Yeah.
So, but we didn't hit it, but it was loud.
Right over you, scared the devil. I was so fast it was over before anything happened.
It didn't look fast.
It didn't, oh.
It just got a buzzing along. You know?
But your guns didn't get it, did it?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Because
it went on, landed somewhere in England, I'm sure.
I see. So then when you're out in that ship, were you going north and south? You didn't go into land, you went up north and south, kept going north and south because you didn't go directly east and west. You didn't go into the land.
No, it's more east and west.
East and west. So you go in, then come back out. So you a trail like a circle.
No, I mean
The ship.
Map, Omaha Beach. You know,
Yes, yes.
It's more like that, I guess.
Yeah, it's facing the west. It's facing the west, the Omaha Beach. Did you go parallel with it or perpendicular to it?
Well, what I'm saying is Omaha Beach is west. West is here. You know,
Yeah,
east.
uh-huh.
It's kind of on an angle.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So it's almost like you could say you're going east and west, or you're going north and south. But
Could you see that Omaha Beach from the ship? Because you're at general quarters. Could you see it from the back of the ship? Could you see where the pillboxes were on the hill, or you just see the beach?
we could not see where the pillboxes were.
Could you see Utah? It was a big mountain there. The Utah and Omaha, they're pretty convincing there. But you're 8 miles out, your vision could be 25 miles, so you probably could see some of that stuff. You didn't know what was going on. Did you see a lot of fire going on and all kinds of ammunition going and things?
We could see the line of landing craft.
Those LVPs that like off the Higgins boats, they're probably too little for you to see much. But then the other bigger boats you could see.
Oh, there was a long line going out.
A big long line.
Yeah,
Wow.
because they were stopped, you know, for a
Uh-huh.
while.
Why'd they stop?
Well, they couldn't advance, you know.
Yes.
Some of them got on shore there, and
Had to stop, yeah.
they were,
And they,
or at least slow. You know, I guess they're still moving, but it didn't look like they were very fast.
I think you guys started a little bit late. So it's the Canadians next to you or the English next to you. Somebody started just a little bit late. Juno Beach, they were a little bit late, I think. But I don't know about you guys. You were on time,
We were
you
on
think?
time.
Yeah, okay. And did you see a lot of planes overhead?
Yes, there were a lot of ours, of course,
Uh-huh.
but we saw some German planes that were shot down.
Did you see mostly bombers above you or sort of like C-47s or fighters? And did you see any parachuters dropping on over there in
No,
Normandy?
I remember mostly fighter planes.
Uh-huh.
Saw a lot of Spitfires.
Yes.
Um,
During those maneuvers that you're doing, did your ship about hit another ship? Because there was a lot of ships then.
well, they weren't
Too close?
quite that close together.
I see, yeah.
And when did you guys start firing?
Everybody started firing at 5:30.
Okay.
Which guns, point the guns you use, because you had to be, your guns are off the bow. It looks like your big guns and off the port, or the stern and the bow, but your bigger guns are off the bow there, right? So those are the ones you fired. Did you faced Omaha Beach?
These two here, there were two back here just like them.
I see. And
Those are 5-inch.
all are 5 inches. So would that go far enough to hit the beach? They knew it, yeah.
We fired a couple of rounds into Point de Hope. That's where the Rangers, you know, were climbing,
Yeah, uh-huh.
trying to climb the cliff, and the Germans were dropping grenades on them.
But you had to shoot all those guns before our troops got there. Once our troops got there, you couldn't be shooting at them because you're going to kill our own guys. How did you know what to do?
Well, we had spotters
I see.
on shore, but that fired 2 rounds, and the captain of the Rangers said, "Stop," because we were getting too close to
Troops.
the troops.
But right at 5:30, you probably just kept, everybody was shooting probably for a couple hours till the troops landed. Then you sort of backed off.
Yeah, right.
And did you hear those great big ones, Big Mo or whatever the big ones were behind you? All the battleships were behind you, and they were firing too. Did you hear that stuff going over you, or did you hear their ships?
No, I was so high, I guess I didn't hear it go.
Now your ship's different than a battleship. Battleship shoots from the sides. Yours shoots from the bow and the stern. Well, I guess the battleship shoots from the front, bow, and stern too, doesn't it? Yeah.
Shot it from the side also.
The turrets turn.
Yeah.
But the turrets only turn so far because they don't want you to shoot yourself. They
Well,
only held about 45 degrees, and also, right? You couldn't.
You can't fire over an end part of the ship.
You couldn't hit because they have a stop. It's like a governor that stops them.
Right. You could.
But also the major problem in war, what you were talking about, is you shoot your own ship. So you got to be careful. Not your own ship, your friend. You know,
Oh,
some
yeah.
ally there. You got to be so careful not shooting your own people.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know all the silhouettes of ships and planes? Did they make you memorize that so you knew what to shoot at?
I didn't have anything to do with.
Because you were a radio man,
Oh,
you didn't need to know. Yeah.
ammunition. But we were told one night to stand out 2,000 yards from the Texas to protect them from any torpedoes that might come in.
Now, a destroyer is important for a depth charge. What you're bringing up there is depth charges, because you guys you had 2 size depth charges. You had a big one and a small one. Can you point those depth charges out on the ship there?
Well, they were right
On the back there?
on the back.
And you had big ones and little ones. And they were pretty daggone. Did you ever watch them drop them? Throw them off?
No. No, I was never in a position to see them at the time they, of course, Normandy, I don't know that they ever dropped any.
Yes.
But anyway, they had 2 racks.
On the back of the ship there,
Yeah.
on both sides of the back of the ship.
And these depth charges were just like barrels, you know. They were where you just release it to roll off.
And that's why they had you protecting the Texas, because you were going to drop some of those off onto it and hit the subs down below you, but you didn't find any then.
Well, they wanted, destroyers, we always said, were expendable.
Why'd they call you a tin can? They all called the destroyers tin cans. Why'd they call you a tin can?
Well, a good example of that was when we were on our shakedown cruise. It was a tug backed into the Murphy. And it bit in a little section. That's why they call them tin cans.
Because they'd bent. They weren't as thick. They were probably a metal of about an inch, where the battleship had about 4 inches, did it not? You had a lot more, maybe 11, I don't know. But you didn't have much.
They didn't have what you'd call armor.
I see. It wouldn't stop anything. If a torpedo hit you, go right through there.
Oh, I'd go right through it.
Yeah.
Well, just like that U.S. Oiler went right through the ship.
Yes. Yeah. Now, this D-Day, did you see them bringing in? How long were you right in that? How many were you there? 24 hours, or did they leave you there longer? You were there June 6th, or you were there June 7th and 8th or 9th, or just 7th or 6th?
We were there from June 6th to June the 23rd.
All right. So you're there about 17 days. You never left that area?
We were back and forth. In fact, we were mostly around Veerville, and that's getting toward Utah Beach.
I see. And where'd you get your supplies then? Somebody come bring you supplies, an oil ship come by you and gas you up and bring you food
I guess we had enough supplies.
for that whole time?
Yeah.
Now, did you see them pull the big mulberries out? They pulled the mulberries out. They're the big silos they pulled out from England and then made their own port there. And they made it only lasted about a month because the storms tore it up. But you probably saw them pulling those out. What did that look like to you?
That reminds me when we were on our way during the daylight. I saw what looked like a great big concrete block. That's exactly what it looked like. And you couldn't even see the tug, because it was pulling it. And it called a Phoenix. And I didn't know what they were, at the time, but
It's amazing creation. The English put that, and they had all these hiding over in Europe, or in England, and they're like a great big silo, 30, 40 feet high, all concrete, and they tugged them over, and then they sunk them and made a port there, because there was no port there. And that port lights, that was a mulberry, but you saw that big concrete, you saw concrete coming across the ocean.
Yeah, I saw it ahead of us, over to the side. So this, of course, it was so far away, but it just looked like a big concrete block.
Strange though, it was strange looking, wasn't it? So
How many of those ports did they build?
Two.
Okay, there's one. I've been to the one at Arromanches, the temporary port they built there.
That was the one that got destroyed by the storm.
It was the worst storm ever, they said, in the North Atlantic for, a century, and it hit right about a month after you landed. But the mulberries helped for quite a while, because you brought things, it was a temporary port. So that was, what are the two names of the ports? I don't remember.
Arromanches was the one I was at.
Oh. And one of them's a little bit left out there.
Yeah, that's at Arromanches.
That's still left, a little bit of it, yeah.
Yeah, there's parts of it.
You never used the port, though. Did you see any ships going up to those mulberries and letting people off or letting tanks off? You never saw that. Did you see any LSTs there that had their they had their ports on the side of them? They'd let them down. You didn't see LSTs like
I
that.
saw LSTs out in the water,
Were they going back and forth to England, or you couldn't tell what they were doing?
I couldn't tell, but I learned later and seen pictures that they would bring them up, and then the tide would go out, and they would just leave them stranded on the beach. And then they could unload them, and when the tide came back in, well, then
They called it a slow-moving target. Also, they were a sitting duck for a whole 24 hours, because they come in at high tide, and then the low tide would go and they would be on sand. And during that day, I think the tide had changed about 17 feet. And that's a big tide change. And that's why you see the pictures, the big LSTs are like a big whale, but they're a sitting duck, because if the Germans had any fighters, they could hit every one of them off. And they had those big, you look at the balloons, did you see those balloons up there, they put blimps up there to catch those Germans. They put them over the Panama Canal, so the German planes would hit those and it would mess them up. Did you see balloons hanging?
I saw a lot of them.
Over there, they were near the shore though, weren't they? Or out in everywhere?
Coming in, they, at least during the daylight, I've seen pictures of lines of the landing craft headed toward the beach, but they were, not real close. But every one of them had a balloon.
Every one, yeah. Huh. Yeah. Was the ocean the waves about 6 feet when you were there? Did the waves get 6 to 10 feet? Because you had a big ship. The LSTs couldn't tolerate. They were flat bottom. You had a V bottom.
They were terrible, I'm sure.
But it doesn't bother you too much?
No, I was used to that kind of water.
Yeah.
So that was not the first thing on my mind.
Yes.
But
Did you see guys on the ships puking all the time, or they got used to it after a while, I guess?
Yeah.
They didn't get too seasick after a while.
at one time I saw just about everybody seasick, but that was later.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did a lot of patrolling just outside the other ships there, patrolling for E-boats were maybe our worst problem. They're like PT boats, and they're fast, and they sunk some of our, probably a lot of LSTs, that type.
They were called E-boats. They weren't like the U-boats. It was like a PT's about,
PT.
it's about 40 to 70 feet long, I think, but they're fast, and they drop those torpedoes and depth charges too. And they got, do they shoot off a torpedo too? I don't know. The E-boats, did they shoot torpedoes or did they just?
That's what they use, yeah.
Shoot torpedoes, yeah.
Yeah. They get in, torpedo somebody and get out real quick.
Did you have a doctor on board, and did you have anybody get sick during your time on the ship, and did the dentist have to work much?
You know, I don't remember if we had a dentist or not. We had a doctor. Yeah, we had, during that exact time, I don't know if we had anybody transferred off for medical problems or not, but,
Because some guys get sick and they gotta leave, or you gotta either take care of them there, or your medic take care of them, or they gotta get off the
I'm sure if
ship.
it wasn't emergency, they just took care of them.
Yes.
But, I don't remember anybody I knew getting sick.
So up till June 23rd, you're right there in the mix of it, and the Americans were a little confident because we did get to shore and we were moving into St. Lo and other places.
Right.
Did you know what was going on there? Because, you know, I was in the Persian Gulf War and they didn't tell you much. You didn't know what was going on. You're sitting out there, you know what you are? You're a pawn. You're a pawn for what would need to be done, but your captain might have known something. A lot of people on the ship don't know what's going on. You just do what you're told.
They didn't tell us much.
You didn't know what was going on. You didn't know we were winning or losing, did you?
No.
You could have been losing. Those 17 days you were there, you didn't know who was in your winning.
Just what they wanted to tell us.
Yes.
Did you guys, after the first morning, did you ever fire your guns again after that at Normandy?
Yeah, the two rounds at Point de Hope.
And that was the last time there?
But,
No, go ahead.
on the 23rd, we went back to Portland, England. And on the 25th, we had a small convoy. We had the Texas, Nevada, and the Arkansas, 3 old battleships, and some heavy cruisers, and I don't remember how many destroyers. The Murphy was one, and we went over to Cherbourg and had what they call the bombardment of Cherbourg, because the Americans were trying to break through there, and so we split into 2 groups. We were in the western group, and with the Nevada, we were protecting the Nevada. And the other 2 battleships and the cruisers and a few destroyers with them were in the eastern group. And mainly we were sometimes laying smoke around the Nevada, and part of the time we were just watching fire. Interesting to watch those. Well, I think they had 12-inch guns. Some of them might have 14, but that old probably 12-inch.
But you saw them hitting Cherbourg. Now, Cherbourg was an important port there, if I recall. Very important. It's right on the tip there down in France, and a big castle's up on the hill. And I think it was pretty well fortified. So that port was useless to us till you could conquer it. But I think they had so many mines there and so many other things. It was very hard to conquer. And that was later in the month of June, wasn't it? Or is that already in July?
No, by the time we left there, I think maybe during that time the Germans destroyed a lot of it.
A lot of it, yeah.
It wasn't usable when we finally took it over.
They just tore it all up. You never saw us use it as a port. When you were there, you never went into port in Cherbourg.
No.
Took too much work to fix it up because they tore it up so much, I guess.
No. During that time, we had the Nevada, then they gave us a target. And was one of the other guns. It fired a couple rounds into Sherburne, and they either it made somebody mad or something. 4 280 millimeter guns picked us as a target.
You think it was the Germans or Americans?
Germans.
Germans, they found you and they're trying to get you.
We were, and this is in the ship's log, we were under fire for 50 minutes.
Wow. You didn't know it though. You didn't feel those bullets.
Yes.
Did any of them hit the ship?
We picked up shrapnel off the deck after,
Wow.
but they never hit us.
Did you see them in the water dropping down anywhere?
Yeah.
So they're pretty close. They were pretty accurate, weren't
Oh,
they?
we were zigging and zagging. And
You're doing everything. Why didn't they go after you? Why didn't they go after a big ship, our Texas? Pick on the big boys. They didn't shoot.
well, they were in the other group.
Oh, I see. You were in the east or the west group.
The Texas had a dud 240 caliber round
Uh-huh.
that dropped on their deck.
Wow.
Just happened to be a dud.
Oh my! They would have taken them out, maybe.
Yeah.
That would have been a problem if it hit their gunpowder.
But they said that the guns that were firing at us were 280 millimeter. You know, that's
Wow, those are big suckers.
for 50 minutes. You know, it seemed like
You zigzag did everything, and you're all general quarters. You're on that back gun. You're scared to death. I mean,
Yeah.
you're scared to death then.
I was scared. Yeah.
And the shrapnel,
I'll
so
tell
it
you
must
what I- I'll
explode
tell you
up.
what I was doing. I was praying.
Praying. Yeah. You know, when I went to war, the day before war, everybody prayed. It was just amazing. Now, that's off here. See, it's just amazing how everybody prayed the day before war. It was amazing when people would, prayers, no matter, it's a human element where we have fear. Anybody that's gone to war, there's a fear element. At your time, you could have lost out, but with us, at that time, you didn't have all the odds on your side,
No.
and you could have still lost.
That's why we quit even thinking of firing our gun.
Yeah. We're fine right here. We're fine. Yeah. Okay, now we're June 28th or so. Cherbourg, that was your scariest time, more than D-Day. That was scarier late in June
You're right.
when you were going after Cherbourg.
Yeah, that was-
Germans must have still had some good guns up there going after you.
They at Sherburne, they had some.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, I was told that our executive officer was running it at that time, and it had somebody with binoculars watching. When they'd see a flash, they would do something different.
So they had enough time because the light was faster than that bullet, and as soon as they'd see a flash, they'd make a turn, huh?
Yeah. Or slow down.
Is that right? And that boat was like a speedboat, then it was doing everything, wasn't it?
Destroyer's pretty fast and maneuverable.
But you had to hang on, it'd throw you off
Well,
just, not that bad.
It wasn't that much, but
Uh-huh.
just enough that, or they couldn't aim very well or something. Anyway,
But they went by the light, not the sound. It's too late for the sound, so they were watching for the light of the end of that gun.
yeah,
in
that's what I
Sherburne.
was told at the time.
Yeah, well, yeah. Huh. Now, tell us about time after Cherbourg, what you did.
Well, we went back to, just kind of, we went back to Portland, and we convoyed a couple of destroyer escorts. Had to think about their destroyer escorts over to Utah Beach, and we just did certain things like that.
How close did you get to the beach, and what did the beach look like then? Because you still were 3 miles out. They wouldn't let your you had a draft of 12, 14 feet in your ship, so
No.
you couldn't get very close. How close did you get to see Omaha then, or Utah?
I wasn't, I must have been off duty at the time, but this journal that I was telling you about, that besides the ship's log, one time said we were ordered into 700 yards.
Wow, that's close. That's close.
That's almost on the beach.
How do you turn around? Because you're going to beach that big boy. 700 yards, that's only 7 football fields. That's close. Wow. They put it in reverse and just turn around. I guess they were escorting another support ship up. They were escorting somebody else. But it wasn't bad gunfire there because we had that area secured. This is a month later. It was secured. They weren't getting you. Germans weren't getting much of us then.
Well, this was fairly
Early.
not the first day. I don't remember.
Oh, in the first week you were talking about. In the first week or two, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, we were still in jeopardy then, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Was it very crowded with ships at that time when you remember, or not much?
You know, sometimes it didn't look like there were many ships around here, but
Yeah.
just depended what section you were in.
Did you see any dead bodies or any blood or any other things or any portions
I
of
went
ships
through-
floating around?
I went through 2 invasions and never saw a casualty.
Yeah, that's all right.
I
That's
don't know if many people could say that or not, but
now we're going to get to the second invasion then, aren't we? Okay, then let's. We're June 28th of 44, so we had Cherbourg. Now what? And tell us what else we did after that.
on
you go
August
to-
15th.
August 15th of 44. Okay, a
that
couple
was
months later.
Operation Dragoon.
Dragoon, and tell us about that. Tell us what Dragoon was. We don't know that.
That was the invasion of southern France. And there was never much, it was not as well known as the invasion of Normandy. A lot of people never even knew about it, I don't think.
It's not in the Mediterranean. You're doing it from the Atlantic or from
Well,
the
this is Mediterranean.
in the Mediterranean. So you're down by Nice or
Yeah.
down by the Riviera,
Marseille.
Okay, so you're coming in that direction in August, and had everybody had we already taken over Italy by that time? The invasion of Italy and all that had already been conquered over there.
Right.
Yeah. When did that get conquered, Bruce? Wait,
43.
43. Italy was pretty much conquered then. Okay, so you're coming in Dragoon. Tell us about that.
Well, our part in that, we were escorting what were known as escort aircraft carriers. They were small. I don't know how those planes ever landed and flew off of those, but they were like maybe Victor ships that they put a deck over and made a aircraft carrier.
They called them aircraft carriers. They weren't as big as an aircraft carrier, and I think a lot of them, they picked them up, put them on with cranes. They weren't as good as the real aircraft carriers, but they really served a big purpose because you had tons of planes to get over there. So you saw a lot of those ships just packed on the top with planes.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to get them in there to get them to Europe, I guess, to get them on land.
Yeah, we had several, some of them were British and some of them American.
So when you're at Dragoon, tell us about what takes place there.
Well, of course, the Army went ashore, and we just stayed off the coast, protecting these aircraft carriers.
Did you ever fire into the
No, we
shore?
didn't fire them.
Okay.
We picked up one pilot who had to ditch his plane.
Mhm.
He was okay, but
So how long did Operation Dragoon last?
a couple of weeks, we were escorting these ships. Occasionally, we'd have to go in and get refueled.
Mhm.
We'd go back to Mers El Kabir, North Africa, or Algeria.
Right.
Sometimes, or we'd go to one of the islands along the coast of France. And, but during that time, we refueled 3 or 4 times at one place or the other. One thing that happened, there was a German officer of some kind and a sergeant, I think. There were 3 of them. They had commandeered a sailboat and were headed for North Africa. And we stopped them and took them aboard, put them in the brig. And so then after that, we took them to one of the islands, I can't remember which, and transferred them over. But that was kind of interesting.
You took some POWs.
Yeah.
Okay. So after Dragoon, well, let me ask you about the refueling. You say there you went into ports. Did you ever? How often did you have to refuel at sea?
You know, I don't remember that picture that showed the ship refueling was made before I went aboard. I don't remember us having to refuel at sea.
So if you were close enough to ports, you didn't have to
Right.
worry about that.
Yeah,
I had an uncle that was on a fuel tanker during the
They
war
were
in the
probably in a
Pacific.
slow convoy, you know,
Gotcha.
and had to refuel.
Understand. So then, from Operation Dragoon, tell us about where you went and what you did.
Let's see, that was, well, we had from around the 1st of September to February to be doing something, so we were in a couple of convoys of merchant ships and did a little of that. And one day we were kind of up in the North Atlantic, and I remember early in the day it started to get a little cloudy, and as the day went on, it got more cloudy and darker. And when it got so cloudy, you know, the water looks like it's almost black. And started picking up wind. And then we were told not to, when it got to be night, the water started spraying over the deck. They said nobody relieved the watch. I happened to be off watch, so I was down below decks at my compartment where I slept. And that night, I was in the middle bunk. So that night I kind of woke up, I had the feeling I was floating. And the next thing I knew, I was rolling around on the deck. It had thrown me out of my bunk. And I wasn't hurt, so I got up and got back in bed and my bunk and went back to sleep. I didn't just stay awake. But the ship has a gauge that shows the point where if you get to that point, you're liable to capsize. And of course, if you capsize, you're not likely to get out. But at a reunion several years later, I was talking to one of the radar men. He said he was watching this gauge. He saw this gauge. And he said one time we went slightly past this mark, and we laid on our side for too long, and then we came back up. He said then he could breathe again. And I'm thinking maybe at that point I fell out of bed.
Probably so, that was probably it. Yeah. Well, you had a couple of other very interesting missions while you were on the Murphy, involving President Roosevelt and the King of Saudi Arabia. Can you tell us about those?
Yes, President Roosevelt was on the USS Quincy, a new heavy cruiser, and he was going over to, well, he ended up at Malta, and they wanted destroyers to, of course, to protect him. And at the speed they were going to go, they didn't have enough, a destroyer wouldn't have enough fuel to go all the way at that speed. So they started out with some destroyers, and then they, as they went along, they had other destroyers waiting there to pick the convoy up with the ship. And we were in the last group, just outside the I haven't seen her moment, I can't think. It was there, Portugal, Straits.
Yeah.
And so we took him through there, and then from Malta he flew to the Yalta Conference, and then he flew back, and then one other destroyer and us escorted him down through the Suez Canal, and we were in the lead, so we were the first destroyer since World War I to go through the Suez Canal.
Oh, yeah, cool.
But we went, took him down to Great Bitter Lake, Egypt, and then they sent us on down by ourselves to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and mission was to pick up the King of Saudi Arabia, and 8 of his people. He wanted to bring his harem, but couldn't allow that. But anyway, we got to Jeddah, and then they came out with a boatload of sheep. He wanted to feed all of us, and he wouldn't eat our food, so that. Yeah, I think they had 80 sheep they were going to bring on board.
He brought his own food.
And of course the captain talked him out of that. And but they did end up with 6 or 8 sheep, I can't remember. And they had a pin on the fantail and for these sheep, and they would slaughter one, hang him up, you know. And so that was interesting to watch them.
I'd say that was probably a unique experience for no other destroyer had that during the war.
I don't know if it is. But yeah, watch them do that. Then instead of 8 people, they finally brought 48 other people. His doctor, his astrologer, his communications officer, and I don't know, a bunch of different people, and 2 of his sons, and brought them aboard. They had to. He had arthritis, so they and he couldn't lift his feet very high, so they couldn't walk very well on steel decks. So they put carpeting in this. What they did, they had to sew canvas together over the forward gun mounts and put this carpeting down, found a big chair for his throne, and so that's where they spent 2 nights with us. And
did you personally see the king?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
he was 6'4", had a black beard, pretty impressive looking man, you know. And I was told that part of the reason he couldn't walk very well was that he had some saber wounds in his legs from when he took over the kingdom from his cousin. And so he was very friendly. Any of the guys that had to go through that area, you know, for their work or whatever they had to do, he would offer them a cup of coffee. And so he had a coffee server. That was one of the men, was a coffee server. And they liked their coffee. But so one day, I guess the next day, they brought him, he came out on deck, you know, and they showed him around and fired a couple of guns for him. And he looked very interested, you know, in that. Sure. I saw that all right. And I did, one time I didn't have any reason to be up there, but just outside his quarters, I had these two guards. They were, of course, had their uniforms on, and they had a belt with a dagger in it, and it was gold. You know, everything was gold. The king had looked like a rope. It looked like it was pure gold, you know, around his turban, and they had a lot of gold, but we took him. Of course, took him back up to Great Bitter Lake and transferred him over to the Quincy where President Roosevelt was there. And then we were going to take him back afterwards, but the British insisted that they take him back. Because, you know, they had been big in that area before, had, I think,
colonies there.
I think they had control of the oil and so forth. It ended up after the U.S. had control. They liked us. Our guys fraternized with them, you know, and so they like us. I don't think the British fraternized with them.
Yeah, do you think they were more condescending to them, the British?
They just didn't fraternize like the Americans. But anyway, they took them back.
Did you ever see President Roosevelt as you escorted him, or when you saw the transfer?
No, I was.
What
I
year
was
are
on
we?
watch
What year?
when they
Date?
transferred.
This is in
That was in February of.
45.
It was like Valentine's Day. It was in February. 45.
I interrupted. Did you see FDR? Did you ever see FDR?
I didn't see him, no.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, he was in a wheelchair, and so he wouldn't have been out on deck a whole lot, I would think.
Did you ever see Montgomery, or did you ever see Patton, or did you ever see Eisenhower?
No.
Did you ever see Big Admirals?
No, I really didn't. We had a captain on the ship when we picked up the King.
What uniform do you usually wear? Do you have brown uniforms like your pants? Brown most of the time, khaki, or you have blue and a blue shirt or white shirt, or do you wear a blue shirt? Yeah. Did you wear a hat, little cap? Did you wear a little
Cap.
Yeah, little cap. Yeah.
White cap.
And your black shoes. You had black shoes and black socks, and
Yes.
and then the shoes. Did they feel good or were they crummy?
They didn't feel very good. I don't
Yeah.
think I had a very good fit.
Yeah. Did you get many letters from your mom, or you had two siblings, or brothers or sisters?
A brother and a sister.
And
Older
did
brother.
they mail stuff to you? Did you mail stuff back to them? Did you ever get it very often, once a week or once a month?
No, my mother. I didn't get mail that often. My aunt in Detroit sent me like cookies or something, you know.
Yeah.
And,
Would they be stale?
a little bit.
Yeah.
Now,
All chopped up, they were in 100 pieces.
Broken.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
was your older brother in the service?
Yes. I found out later that when I was at Normandy, he was in England. He was in the Army Air Corps. He was a sergeant.
What did he do for him? What was his job as an Army Air Corps?
Well, he was a sergeant, that's all I know.
Yeah.
He didn't fly.
So after you drop off the King, then what's next for you and the Murphy from there?
We came back to the United States.
So when Germany surrendered, you were already back in the U.S.?
Yeah. When we came back to the United States, I got a 12-day leave. And to get home, I had to catch a train to New York.
When'd you get back? What date?
That was, I don't remember the exact date, but it must have been,
July of 45 or August of 45?
no, that leave I'm thinking about was in the fall before we had the King on board.
Okay.
And to go home, I took the train to, went through Danville, Illinois, and then down to Kentucky. And my brother still, at that time, lived in McLean County,
And did
where
you,
she lived when I left. And so had to go, Slaughter's, Kentucky, which is, well, I'm sure you know probably where that is. I got off the train, it had to stop just for me. And it was starting to get dark. And I had to walk 9 miles. That was in Hopkins County. And I had to walk 9 miles to McLean County. And I got a ride for about 1 mile. And then there was no more, I didn't see another car when I got home. And it was all farmland, and a lot of them turned out the lights, and went to bed. And it was after midnight when I got home. Had to cross a small river, had a ferry to go across it. And fortunately, the guy that ran the ferry was awake, or maybe he stayed awake in case a car came by. But
Green
anyway,
River, across the Green River maybe? Was it the Green River?
Pond River.
Pond River, I see.
You know where that is? It's actually the border between Hopkins County and McLean County. And where I wanted to go was about 1/8 of a mile, I guess, on the other side of the river. And I was carrying a bag, not my sea bag, but with some clothes in it. But I don't remember exactly, but it was after midnight when I got there. I walked 9 miles.
Mm.
What was that experience like when you saw your mama? You hadn't seen your mom in 4 years. What was it like when you saw her?
Well, I'd been, because I lived in Detroit. It was great.
Yeah, pretty emotional. Just her, when you got there, you woke her up at midnight and cry a little bit and stuff.
Well,
Boy, she didn't think she'd ever see you again. And she might not have thought she'd ever see your brother again.
But
You know, a lot of people were lost in World War II.
So once you get back to the States then, and then did you have other assignments before you left the Navy? What'd you do once you got back here?
Before you tell you what,
In June of '45, we came back to Boston to take the torpedo tubes off and put some more anti-aircraft guns on for the ship to go to the Pacific. And I had been promoted to regular second class by then, and they came through with an order for that, well, it said with me in charge. There were four of us by then, so another man had been trained. And it's the time that I took that training, I thought I had remembered that they put us under a different category under the Bureau of Personnel. So they came through, Bureau of Personnel came through this order, with me in charge and all four of us to be transferred to Portland, Maine for further training and transfer. So right away when we got to Portland, we were put on a train with a sleeping car and took a 4-day ride across country to Seattle. And then we got there, I was transferred to Bainbridge Island in Puget Sound to a Navy radio station. So the last 6 months I was at this radio station.
Okay, so you were on a base at it.
Yeah.
Let's see. So do you remember the day the war ended? VJ Day, do you remember that?
I remember when it ended, but I wasn't anywhere that I could be kissing the girls.
Sure. You were working.
I was working.
Did you feel a sense of relief though? Or?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was highly in favor that they dropped the bomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the estimates of the lives it would have cost had they not.
They expected, I saw a map, that they had expected to lose 1 million men.
I read that myself.
Split up into two groups. And the Japanese would have lost at least that many.
Exactly.
So,
And the Japanese would have lost a lot more civilians probably than.
oh yeah, they would have fought
Right.
like, their homeland.
Yes. And then the war ends. Then what's next for you then?
I was discharged in December '45, and in January I enrolled at Evansville College, and I got my engineering degree in. Well, actually, I finished in '49, December, but I was in the graduating class in 1950.
Cool.
So I worked. First of all, I worked for International Harvester, and that was eventually bought by Whirlpool.
Right.
So that's where I retired from.
Okay. So you worked in the same building where they built the P-47 planes?
I was up in they had a mezzanine through the middle of there, where they had the engineering offices and accounting, and I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, I bet so. And then, so you took advantage of the GI Bill then to get your degree?
Yes.
And then, so then you spent your life here in Evansville after the war and raised your family and
Right.
finished your career at Whirlpool, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I know you've taken a couple of trips back to Normandy since the war. Can you tell us about those experiences?
There's 6 trips.
6 times.
First one was 2016, and we were there for the D-Day ceremonies on that one, and that was very interesting. The next year, 2017, we went to the Bastille Day Parade, and on that one, I was supposed to be there the day before to be with President
Obama or
President Trump.
Trump, yeah.
And I drove to Louisville to catch a plane and waited there, and it didn't. They had bad weather in Chicago, so the plane got to Louisville so late that I couldn't have made connections and to get over to France. So I drove home and drove back the next day, and of course then I had to go by myself. And that time I got there, and they had a hotel that was in the embassy compound, and I had, of course, it missed President Trump. There were 2 other veterans that were there. They made it. Trump read my name, but I wasn't there. But then when I got there that morning, the CEO of the Greatest Generations Foundation met me outside the hotel, and we got my luggage up to the room, and I said, how much time do I have to put my tie on and get over to the parade? And he said 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my jacket on. I wasn't dressed exactly like I wanted to be. Then we went over, and we were about a block from the president's. And I stood there for, parade was about 50 minutes to the best parade I ever saw. And was leaning on a temporary fence by the Champs-Élysées. And after it was over, we thought the President Trump would come down that side street. But he didn't, but the First Lady of France came walking over and shook hands with everybody down the line. She got to us. She said, "Does my husband know you're here?" And well, we had an invitation on the presidential stationer, and we said, "No, I don't think so." She said, "I'll go get him." So she went back up there, and a little bit later, she came down, and he came down, and they said, "How about a picture?" There were photographers out there. I said, "How about a picture?" So he walked over beside me, and we had a picture made.
Cool.
And I carried a copy of that with me.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
So that was in 2017, and then in July I was back over there again for the liberation of Paris, and we were in a parade through Paris.
Cool.
It was hot, and I had on, we were dressed, tie,
Mm-hmm.
jacket, and just about burned up. But, and this year, I was over in June for on the Queen Mary 2. And we were on stage every day. At 10 o'clock we were in the theater, and at least, usually 2 or 3 of us on stage with a man that works with Fox News at a station out in Denver. And he would ask us questions, we'd talk about our experiences in the war. And there would be a good crowd in the theater, for that. It was billed as the Veterans Tour by Kennard. They have kind of I don't know what kind of a deal they have with each other, But
That's
I
kind
was
of,
interesting, and we had a 5-course meal every